They were bitter rivals, both fighting to make history. Passed over for vice president, is it possible that Hillary Clinton will now play a starring role in the Obama White House? Newspapers, everyone, including members of her staff and members of your staff, have said that Hillary Clinton is on the track and will be named Secretary of State. Now, you and I are sitting here. It would be so nice if you confirmed this as a little Thanksgiving present.
Barbara, you're not going to get anything out of it.
Why not? What's holding it up? I mean, you make all the announcements and not her.
Until I actually make an announcement, they're not official. I've only announced my economic team so far. We'll have, after Thanksgiving, an announcement about our national security team, about positions like commerce. But you never want to jump the gun. You always want to save a little bit of surprise. Nobody would come to my press conferences if I spilled the beans all on 2020.
Okay, we've also heard that President Bush's defense secretary, Robert Gates, has been offered the opportunity to stay on, and he's agreed. You're going to tell me I have to wait?
You're not going to get a thing out of me.
Shortly after our interview, there were media reports that Robert Gates would likely continue on as Secretary of Defense. You know, the primary theme of your campaign, of course, was change and new ideas, but a lot of the people on your team are former Clinton people, former Clinton insiders. So some people say, what happened to change?
Well, you know, it's interesting that people say this. In a job like Treasury, for example, it's critical that we have somebody who has some experience dealing with the kinds of economic crises that we are dealing with. And that means that I'm drawing from a pool of people who typically worked in the Clinton administration. The change comes from the person in the Oval Office and the vision that I've put forward.
Okay. They have experience. You represent the change that uses their experience.
Absolutely.
Okay. I want to talk about foreign policy. You said that you are in favor of sending more troops into Afghanistan. How much of a surge are you talking about, and when?
Well, I think that we need 2 to 3 additional brigades that will ensure that our troops that are there aren't being attacked and on the defensive from the Taliban, but instead we can go on the offensive and make sure that we're going after al-Qaeda and bin Laden, those who killed 3,000 Americans and who are still targeting Americans.
How soon will you do this?
Well, this is why it's so important for us to put together a plan for withdrawing from Iraq. Yeah. It is hard for us to find the troops that are needed in Afghanistan if we continue to have 140,000 plus troops in Iraq.
Do you consider Iraq today a victory?
I would say that Iraq has made enormous improvements in terms of security. People's lives are better now than they were certainly 2 years ago or 3 years ago. Our job is to make sure that we are leaving behind an Iraq that it has territorial integrity, that is not harboring terrorists that could go after us.
So no victory quite yet?
Well, improvement. And I think improvement is important.
You know, with all due respect, you said you're going to get Osama bin Laden. Nobody's been able to. What are you going to do that's different?
What I've said is that we're going to focus on getting bin Laden, and we were distracted because of the war in Iraq, a war that I don't think we needed to fight. We should have stayed focused on Afghanistan. We should have stayed focused on al-Qaeda, who have safe havens, have training camps, and are plotting and planning to kill Americans. And my job as president is to keep the American people safe, which means that I'm going to stay focused on the number one strategic threat that we face, and that's from al-Qaeda and that's from bin Laden, and we are going to put all the pressure that is necessary in order to bring them to heel.
I want to ask you a sensitive question. There is, of course, a tremendous outpouring of goodwill towards you, but there has also been a reported increase in racist violence since you were elected. I mean, there are crosses being burned, there are internet racist postings. Authorities say that there are more threats against you than any other president in history. Why do you think this is happening?
Well, look, part of what you're seeing is an enormous vindication of the progress that we've made when it comes to race relations in America. The fact that people, whether they voted for me or against me, overwhelmingly judged me on the basis of my platform, my plans? Could I help the American middle class? That's how I was judged. And we saw in Grant Park on the night of my election a representative sampling of Americans and what they believe and what they stand for. At the margins, are there going to be extremists? Of course, that's true in any society. But they're not at the heart of who America is and what we believe. And they're going to be further marginalized as time goes on because the next generation, I think, is even more open to the idea of people from different backgrounds, different races, different ethnicities, different religions coming together to live out that American dream.
There are a lot of people concerned about your safety. Are you concerned about your safety?
No, I don't think about it. Partly because I've got this pretty terrific crew of Secret Service guys that follow me everywhere I go, but also because I have a deep religious faith and a faith in people that carries me through the day. And my job is just to make sure I'm doing my job, and if I do, I can't worry about that kind of stuff.
The president-elect doesn't worry about his safety, but he does worry about losing something that is near and dear. How are you going to get along without your BlackBerry?
This is a problem. One of the things that I'm going to have to work through is how to break through the isolation, the bubble that exists around a president. And I'm in the process of negotiating with the Secret Service, with lawyers, with White House staff.
You might have a BlackBerry?
Well, I'm negotiating to figure out how can I get information from outside of the 10 or 12 people who surround my office in the White House. Because one of the worst things I think that can happen to a president is losing touch with the struggles that people are going through every day.
You've said that one of the hardest things that you had to do was to quit smoking.
Yeah.
With all this pressure, no one's listening. Do you ever sneak a cigarette?
You know, I've said that there have been a couple of times where I fell off the wagon during the course of the campaign. But Michelle's a pretty good policewoman when it comes to this. And look, you know, part of what I think comes with this role as president is not that you're perfect, but hopefully you're trying to set a good example for people, and that starts with my two kids. And so I've been trying to stay pretty healthy. I've been getting workouts regularly. I've been eating reasonably well, I got to say, during the campaign. There were a lot of burgers on the road, but you know, I've been trying to stay fit.
The bowling alley at the White House is going to go, a basketball court's coming in?
Well, it turns out that we've got a tennis court in the White House, and I think the guys in charge say they maybe can put a couple of basketball hoops at either end, so that may be good enough for spring. And I hear there's a gym at Camp David, so we may leave the bowling alley in place partly because it's clear I'm going to have to practice if I want to get any good.
When you're sworn in as president, two of the people closest in your life, your mother and your grandmother, of course, will not be there. Your grandmother lived long enough to know that her grandson was going to be president.
Yeah, she voted for me.
She voted for you, yes.
Yeah.
Do you think your mother would ever have imagined this? And what would she say?
You know, I have to say my grandmother never would have imagined it because she was very much the realist. I've got to say my mother, she wouldn't be that surprised because her attitude was that
you can do anything.
anything.
My kid can do anything.
Her son and daughter, they figured whatever they want to do, they can do. But, you know, I think she would be proud of how we did it.
Make us proud!
That, I think, would please her quite a bit.
When you were a little boy,
yeah,
what did you think you were going to be?
I had a bunch of different schemes. For a while, I thought that I might end up being an architect. I liked the idea of building things. I don't know what happened to that. I still really admire architects, and I love looking at buildings.
Breakaway, Obama, left-handed good.
Then for a while I thought that I might be a basketball player until I realized that I wasn't good enough to be a professional basketball player. I thought I might be a judge, but then I decided after going to law school that I was probably a little too restless to sit on a bench all day long. So the one thing I know I didn't expect was that I was going to be president of the United States.
Well, when you've named all the things you couldn't be, the only thing that's left is to be president,
You know,
isn't it?
yeah, I guess if you've got to find some use for yourself, this isn't a bad way to do it.
When we come back, Michelle Obama.